Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from the FTX janitor closet. I'm cleaning up the pieces of my retirement fund. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. We've got a pretty packed episode. There's a ton to talk about with the Brazilian Grand Prix for F1. Of course, we have a little bit of other esports, whatnot to talk about, and then Magic the Gathering. Justin, good to see you, my man.
Yeah, good to see you too. It has been a packed week. We had a lot going on over the weekend, a lot coming up as well. But that is the playoff and championship season. So happy to be here. Like I said, good to see you too, sir. Why don't you start us off? Give us your rose, thorn, and seed here for the week.
Sounds good. So for my rose, our trip that we went on for Colleen's 30th birthday was a lot of fun. It went smoothly, no real issues, couple flight delays, but nothing that really they were pretty minor, nothing that hampered our time. Just had a great time, did some whale watching. So surprisingly saw a whale, which I didn't think was as uncommon as it is. But apparently in the San Diego area, they only had last fall during the migration season, they only had 3 or 4 whales reported coming through. So the fact that in this I think they said maybe 30 to 40 day span of them traveling from Alaska to the warmer waters in Mexico, the likelihood of us being there out on the water on a day that one of these few whales came through was pretty cool. So we got to see that, some dolphins, but overall just a really nice time on that trip.
The whale thing sounds a little bit, isn't that kind of crazy that they're just wow, yeah, we're just going to take you out into this water, and if you see it, you see it, but if not, we still get your money. That's kind of hilarious.
It is, but also on the same side, or on their side of it, they had a person who was there doing professional, I think their title was, they were the naturalist, and okay. So they had all this information about the typical habits of not just whales, but all the potential sea life that we could see, from sea lions to seals to dolphins to whales. Okay. So they're talking over the intercom on the boat and everything. It was pretty funny because I don't get seasick, which I'm genuinely surprised about, because I've gotten motion sickness my whole life from not paying attention when you're riding in a car and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And I have no problem with boats. So Colleen and I were just chilling, but the amount of people that were just there with their families, and one person was just having a bad time. We were up on the top deck where it moves the most, and we're just chilling. We went down a couple times to use the restroom on the boat and everything. There's people just laying in the fetal position on the bench chairs in the lower deck, just not feeling good. I felt for them, but I was also somewhat entertained because when I went to the bathroom the one time, the bathroom next to me, I could just hear someone just heaving and having the worst time. And that doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't gross me out or anything. But it was almost a cartoon level of sounds coming. I'm like, oh, wow. I'm like, how is this real? That someone's just sounding like that. I won't imitate it because I know that'll gross some people out. But I was just sitting there, just using the restroom. And I'm like, oh man, I am glad I'm not that guy. But but it was a bad day. Yeah, but it was a cool trip. Got some cool videos, pictures of whales, dolphins, whatnot. But yeah, it was a pretty good rose, and I'm glad that my planning and everything went smoothly.
Nice.
Because
Yeah, very cool.
I'm not a big planner. I'm a doer. I so that was not in my wheelhouse. So definitely happy that it went smoothly.
Nice.
So my thorn though is that traveling is also just kind of exhausting. Both of our travel days, with flights, connecting flights, rental car driving and whatnot, we're about like 13 hours of just straight travel,
Oh yeah.
which is just a lot.
Hmm.
It like it worked out fine. Like I said, everything went smoothly, but at the end of those days, you're just like pretty gassed. When we got there initially, both of us had like just massive headaches, probably from like not drinking enough water because we're just on a flight where they don't have much free drinks and whatnot. And then we're just running through the airport to catch the next flight. So it was probably dehydration headaches, but it wiped us out pretty good both days,
Sure.
with the travel. But my seed for this week, we're starting to get into that holiday season. So just figuring out holiday planning, in terms of spending time with both of our families. Our puppy that we're going to be getting in 9 days now. Super pumped about. But that will also just shift things around with at least Christmas plans and everything. So a lot coming up on the horizon. 'Tis the season. So
Yeah, the that's pretty exciting, man. The countdown begins for the puppy, and likely you've had it going for longer than 9 days. But yeah, we're getting
yeah,
into the home stretch there, almost within that week. That's super exciting.
yeah. On I guess it was Friday. Colleen's like 11 days till we get the puppy, and I'm like, that sounds about right. I didn't like check it. Then later in the day, she's like, 13 days till the puppy. I'm like, I actually did the math. I'm like, it's 14 days. Like neither of your guesses were right. You're just winging it. But now we are actually into single digit days until we get her.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, very excited about that. But a pretty good week. How have you been? How was your week? What's going on?
Yeah, doing well. My seed is holiday related as well. If you remember last year, we talked about wanting to like kind of plan the holidays a little bit better, have a better idea. One of the things I asked Sarah to do is like, if you want me involved, if you need my help with something, like that's fine, but it can't be like on me to like initiate your idea. That's like kind of tough to like keep track of.
Yeah. Well, that's like how
Um,
I am. That's why I was saying with planning. Like, I'm not a planner. Like, my mind sees about 4 days ahead of time. So I'm a doer. So I'm like the same
mhm.
way. I'm like, just like, tell me what needs to be done. I'll make it happen. But yeah, like figuring things out or knowing even what initiative to take is not
Right.
easy.
Yeah, especially like if you don't put it on my radar, there's a bunch of other things swimming. But she did bring it to me. I mean, it's November. It's November 16th. We talked about it a couple days ago. That she wanted to do it either last weekend if we had the opportunity, or this coming weekend. So this is like well in advance. We'll have some decorations up for like throughout the holiday season, and so we can kind of enjoy them a little more and enjoy
Nice.
the light. So I think that is I think that's a great seed moving forward. Just like something we talked about, talking about a change, we implement that change, and like here we are having it actually like work out and be a little more comfortable. So I think that's really fun. So yeah, kind of looking forward to the holidays. We're gonna have looking forward to have the lights up here, and
Nice.
then my thorn here for the day is just a little bit of gratefulness here. So I got the second two tires put on to even out my suspension and hopefully set me right going into the winter. To be safe on the roads. And I just really appreciate Sarah in this scenario because those car service days can be a bitch if you don't have somebody to help, like, just drop it off and peace out and then bring you back. Sitting there and waiting can just be like a massive headache. So just big gratefulness to Sarah for helping me out with that. It's always nice to have help on the car service days because they can be long.
Yeah, it depends like where you go, what you have to have done, but they can definitely drag. So yeah, that's a nice thing to have.
And then another moment with Sarah here over the week. Me and her, my this is my rose here. We have been, if you remember, talked about the video games titles that we were excited for, or that I was really excited for. So Kingdom Hearts 1, we've been playing it. We made the final push this weekend. We ended up finishing the game, and she sat with me through all the hours of the main storyline. And she fell in love with it. She just loved the music, the characters, the story, because it's all about like friendship and just like all of those like really like wholesome elements, but just with like some really exciting combat. So I thought it was really fun to finish that and just kind of relive that game, and especially the ending sequence is really exciting. So that's just my rose here is finishing Kingdom Hearts 1 and then looking forward to the other titles in that pack. Next up is Chain of Memories, which was originally a Game Boy Advance release, I believe. And so that got ported to the PC, so it's like a full 3D game now. So I'm just really excited for that. So my rose is basically just Kingdom Hearts.
Nice, I dig it. That's cool. So she was playing as like second player, or just watching you on the playthrough.
Just watching on the playthrough. She was my couch rider here.
Nice, like
Yeah, it
it.
was sweet.
That
It
sounds like
was
fun.
dude, it's such a good game. Um, yeah, so we just had a blast. But that's my rose, thorn, and seed here for the week. I don't want to hog any more time. We had a pretty exciting weekend as far as the 2022 Sao Paulo Grand Prix in Brazil was concerned. So I'd like to get into that. We had just a really shakeup of a weekend, all sorts of out of position players here, and just some really interesting storylines coming out of the weekend.
Yeah, well, and as we had kind of talked about last week leading into it, we were expecting rain all weekend long. We ended up only getting it for the qualifying on Friday, which worked out great, but it was still phenomenal racing weekend. But because of that, we did have a pretty wonky and mixed up grid for the qualifying to go into the sprint race. We had George Russell Bennett on his last go around as the track was starting to dry out, pulling out the red flag, leaving the unexpected Kevin Magnussen P1 pole position for the sprint race, who had just gotten the timing right with his team to get out on the track, get a nice hot lap in as the track was drying out. And with the red flag from George, was able to hang on to that going into the sprint race. So we had people kind of all over the place. Magnussen up front, Max in P2. We had Sainz in 5th, Leclerc in 10th, Hamilton in 8th, Checo in 9th. So a lot of people just out of order from where you would typically expect them. And of course, nothing is better than a Haas sandwich. So Mick down in P20 and Kevin up in P1, just sandwiching the entire grid.
That's actually really funny.
Yeah, so it was a pretty exciting quali that led well into the sprint race. So,
well, and like what's actually funny about that is like the easy thing to say is like, oh yeah, the rain came and like he just was able to keep that because nobody was able to set like a faster thing. The funny thing is like he actually got that on merit. Max's time like right after that was like actually slower than Magnussen's and a couple other people. They would have needed another lap to try and beat that, and that's when the timing window like kind of crash closed, and you weren't gonna get any faster time, so it's stuck at the top. So actually, it wasn't even that much of a fluke. So the joke really is like, oh, he like got P1 like on just at the right time, obviously.
Right, yeah. I think if George doesn't crash there, then he doesn't end up on pole. He still probably would have been like top 5 or top 6, somewhere in there. But yeah, it worked out perfectly for them, which was pretty cool. I mean, I think that's Haas's first pole position. Kevin Magnussen's first pole position.
I think so. You're right, for Haas.
Yeah. So just in general, a really, really cool day leading into the sprint. The sprint for them, of course, didn't quite go as expected. Like I said, it did dry out and it was rain free for the rest of the racing weekend, at least. So we had Magnussen just kind of slowly fall down the grid more towards where he should have been, but picked up a point in the sprint race in that P8 position at the end of the day.
Yeah, surprisingly, he didn't like drop further back, interestingly enough. But yeah, it was kind of heartbreaking to watch him just like kind of holding on to the lead for a little bit and then just
If it had been wet weather, like I think he would have had a better time holding on to it.
Sure.
But I mean, it's just what the Haas car has been all year. It's just not.
No, I know.
Yeah, it's not gonna, even with that P1, and he got a great start and everything too. But
yeah, everything was in his favor.
Just
by the sheer pace of the car, like he was never gonna stay ahead of them.
Right, exactly. Right. Which is a bummer because I was impressed with that through and through. But George Russell ends up coming around, getting his first sprint win and everything on the weekend, which was cool. He was pumped, and we ended up with Max sliding down from that P2 start to P4, primarily because everyone was on the soft tires and Max was on the mediums because they didn't have an extra set of softs to use for the sprint race. They were saving 2 sets for the main race, so they intentionally picked the medium tire because they knew, because literally everyone else except maybe one person was on the soft tire. So from everything I was seeing and reading, it seemed like at least Red Bull came out and they're like, our intention is to have like 2 sets of softs for race on Sunday. So
gotcha. See, now you're teaching me something. I didn't know that element. I thought it was like kind of a mistake or something going on. I didn't totally understand the
to some extent, yeah, but it was a mistake more so earlier in the weekend of not having the soft tires available that they would have wanted for the sprint race. So they kind of burned through a little bit too much rubber earlier on in the weekend before the sprint, whether that was in quali or whatnot. So
that's funny. That's like an actual like use for that phrase. I thought burning rubber was just for like, street racers and people drag racing, but no, you're absolutely right. They did just burn too much soft tire rubber.
Yeah, so
holy shit.
So the sprint race, I think, kind of shifted things back to about where they would be, minus, of course, the start of teammates having some beef this weekend with Alonso and Ocon crashing into each other. It was deemed to be Alonso's fault and everything with the incident, but the entire time leading up to the race, Alonso was just throwing the blame. Even after I think they had said it was his fault, like throwing the blame onto Esteban. So Fernando Alonso leaving a team and burning a bridge. What's new? It seems like he likes to go out with some fiery spirit from each of the teams he leaves. It sounds like he had similar exits from McLaren and Ferrari in yesteryear. So
Yeah, and it's interesting. It doesn't sound like he wants anything to do with the like "don't race each other" calls. He's just like, no, like what am I out here to do? I think it having no inside information, it feels like he's just like fed up with that kind of call, kind of racing style type of team thing, and he's just like, nah, I'm out of here.
yeah, and so like I think on the other side as well, Ocon is kind of not enjoying the animosity because he was told to let Alonso through during the race on Sunday, and he was like arguing about it with the pit wall and everything as well. So some beef there. People not really getting along super well, and that was just the start of that. So leading into the actual race, unless was there anything else you had notes on from the sprint?
No, I don't think so. That was pretty straightforward. I just thought it was funny. George Russell gets his first win in Formula One with like a sprint race. That's just like an interesting like little caveat. You want your first win to be a Grand Prix, but actually it's just like this little side event that's on Saturday.
Yeah, for me, I just kind of count the sprint race as like a qualifying. Essentially, I don't really think I try not to.
It is a race, though.
It is, but I try not to put it on the same like level either.
But it is. It very much is.
I don't think so. I don't know. I still count Sunday as George's first race win. So in F1.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, Sunday, the race itself, the Grand Prix, Sao Paulo was a shit show. It was so much fun to watch. I don't know where to even start. I mean, we had contact with. Well, I'll start with the biggest bummer for me being Kevin Magnussen just getting knocked out in lap one. Danny Ricciardo taps him on the back. He goes spinning out and then ends up taking Ricciardo out as he's spinning. Of course, on just the way it happens. So the two of them being out in lap one was definitely not how I wanted the race to start. It went through the first I think it was 4 or 5 turns without issue. We made it through turn one. We made it through the S's, and then just coming through, I think it was turn 5 or 6. Ricciardo just takes him out, brings out the safety car on lap one, and kind of puts the race on pause for a couple laps.
And that really does change the momentum as the viewer. They're calling a super exciting start of the race. It's just, the momentum and energy just drops way down, and then you're just like, oh well, this guy just ruined this time here, and it's all kind of slows down. And yeah, just unfortunate for Daniel just having a really rough time of it. I know the early section of Sao Paulo is pretty tight and tough. Like you were saying, I'm surprised we actually got through the opening section pretty clean. But it all just bunched up too much around Daniel and Kevin, and they make contact, get tapped a couple other times. So that was super unfortunate start to the race here.
Yeah, and weird scenario, but the medical car only has one seat apparently for drivers. So Daniel who had taken a pretty nice hit into the wall, got the seat in the safety car or in the medical car to head back to the pits, get checked out and all. And Kevin was just like left there. Like they didn't really talk about it on the broadcast. I found out about this afterwards. Like he was left there for like he was left there so long he decided to walk back and was like having to walk through like the crowds and whatnot to try and get back to the pit lane because they never sent a car back out to like pick him up. So
Yeah,
it
that's
was
probably an oversight there.
yeah. So he was like someone had to cut a hole in a fence for him to get through to be able to get over to like the pits, and it was a whole thing.
They cut a hole in the fence?
Per these tweets, it says so Kevin Magnussen was left stranded at lap 1 crash scene after Ricardo got the only seat in the medical car and no one thought to send it back around to pick him up. Magnussen eventually gave up on waiting and attempted to get back on foot. Apparently someone cut a hole in a fence to help him out, and then he found himself walking through a public area surrounded by fans as he tried to make it to the pits.
Brutal.
So a weird way after getting you get like that has to be the weirdest weekend for him. You take pole position on a weird wet weather day in quali, like you bag a point in the sprint race, then in the Grand Prix you get taken out lap 1 and just stranded. And they're just like he got home alone. What? They forgot Kevin.
And how quick do you go from like being the hero to like, Daniel, are you okay? Oh, Daniel, have the seat in the medical car.
I mean, Daniel definitely took the harder hit, so he probably did need to actually be checked out more so,
Sure.
But it just blows my mind. Like, in the majority of the other races, it seems like when people are hiking back to the pits, and we've seen it, I think we saw it like Zandvoort or somewhere with Lewis. There's that picture of him like trudging along this trail. It seems like that's usually more because they're like pissed and they're like refusing the moped ride back to the pits or anything. There's like I just need I don't want anyone around me. I'm just heading back kind of thing. But no, it sounds like he just got forgotten. So poor Kevin.
Well, and I do want to give the benefit of the doubt. Like, it is not all one organization taking care of all elements of the production of the weekend. So some of that marshaling comes down to the like on-site staff that is there, whether it's a Formula One race or a Porsche Super Cup race or whatever it is. So to a certain degree, you kind of want to like be a little forgiving on that end, where it's these organizations are putting on trying to put on this massive show,
right?
And
it's also like not easy to send the medical car. Like there's a safety car, and it's not like a red flag where all the cars are brought in the pits. Like there's it's not the easiest thing to even send something back out around to pick him up and all. But it definitely was a small oversight. I don't think it's a huge issue or anything. I found it more amusing of a story. And I hope that Kevin got a lot of good pats on the back from fans and whatnot as he was going through.
I'm sure the support's crazy.
Well, especially I think I don't think anyone was unhappy that he got that pole position. I think everyone across the board seemed, from everything I saw, was super excited for him. Just tweets from any and every Formula One outlet that I follow or could have seen that ends up on my feed. I'm like, that's cool. Everyone was just super pumped for him getting his first pole position and for Haas and everything. So I'm sure the fans were kind to him on his way around.
Yeah, most definitely. But yeah, just had to work those legs a little bit. Those hammies, getting a little bit of a workout, having to walk back. But yeah, that was a pretty unfortunate lap one scenario. Like we said, kind of ices the race here for a little bit. But that wasn't the only contact that we had throughout the race.
No, but George and I want to just continue to give George like really, really a lot of credit throughout talking about the race because, for one, he had pole from winning the sprint race. He held on to it with a great start at the beginning of the race. Was like car lengths ahead of Lewis at out of the gates and everything, going through the first turns. Like it wasn't tight. He got a phenomenal start. Safety car restart number one, no issues. He handled it impressively. I was very curious to see how he was going to handle it because, of course, you do have at the end of the lap, you have that long, hot, like full out curve into the long straightaway. And he did a phenomenal job of not jumping too early and giving the slipstream. I was even watching, and it was really impressive to me how he was using his weaving, because obviously he's like, once the safety car is coming in, he gets control of the pack, and you see him weaving back and forth, and as he's coming around that last turn, he just took one of those weaves in and just sent it on that after like holding everyone up. So it was like you knew he was going to do it, but he each time in those restarts picked the perfect time when Lewis was like out of sync with the weave, going kind of the opposite way to just like send it and take off, and didn't have any issues on the restarts, which we commonly see. Like drivers don't get that much practice with safety car restarts, especially at the lead of the pack. You get maybe a couple times a year if you're a top car to get that opportunity to practice that. So really good on him in a high pressure situation, leading a Grand Prix with kind of the hopes, of course, of getting his first Grand Prix win and everything. So I have to give huge props. But like you said, not the only contact that we had was between Magnussen and Danny. We had, of course, Lando tapping Charles Leclerc. Sent it just a little too tight on the curb coming around one of the turns. Hopped a little and kind of slid across the track out into Leclerc, which was, of course, unintentional, but a big bummer. And honestly, I was shocked that Leclerc was able to drive out of that. There's very few instances that a car goes into the barrier as hard as he did that they're able to actually like reverse out and get the car going without any sort of like structural damage. Like he slid right in there perfectly.
Yeah, and it's just so funny to think about that scenario where like it does have to be a series of fortunate events to be able to, get back onto the track, get back to the pits and keep on going, which is like fascinating to a certain degree. Like if you remember, I think it was in Austria where Checo ran just like straight into a wall, and when you try and get the reverse, like the front wings are like stuck behind the plastic. Yeah. So you just got to beach the thing, red flag it and get the car out of there. Mm-hmm. But in Charles's scenario, it like pulls the wings off, doesn't have any like little bits or chunks that are stopping the reverse. He's able to pull it out. He can just go get like a new front wing. And then speaking of front wings, we had the with the contact with Max. This is just like in like moments in the race. We can talk about Charles. Then the time to change the wing was, I believe they said record time. So it's just interesting how those things go in a race and how much like they actually factor in.
Oh yeah, because that's so tough to do. Like that sucks for the pit crew to try and change a front wing.
Yeah. And so to even get the opportunity to get back to the pits and get that change for Charles is quite a good one. He ends up P4 at the end of the day, so he's really able to recover that, which is huge. And then, just from Max's point of view with the front wing, just having his pit team able to just lock it down, get him back onto the track faster than anybody has recently. So I think some positive notes coming out of some just like unfortunate driver contact.
Yeah,
But
and with Leclerc too, it was just so funny watching it because I see you see the contact, you see him spin out, he's in the wall, but they kept following the racing as it went down, and you see yellow flag sector 1 or whatever, and then I'm just waiting, I'm like, where's the safety car?
Right.
And then the broadcast is like, yeah, so no safety car. It looks like Leclerc's moving, and I'm like, how? I'm like, he went in hard.
Exactly.
He went so hard into the wall. But no damage to the structure of the front, just the wing. And he reversed it out of there and just put in a great drive from that point, which is awesome. So huge props to him on that.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, it's a drive that keeps them I'm pretty sure them and Mercedes, because he was able to recover the drive, I'm pretty sure they're even on constructors points going into next race. So that was even really critical for him to get that done.
So Ferrari's still up. They're up by 19 points, but if he had DNF'd, he ended up picking up what was it? He picked up 12 points. So Mercedes would be 7 points behind,
right,
as opposed to 19.
What am I thinking? Is there are there teams that are even on points right now?
So Checo and Leclerc are even on points at 290 in P2. So are for the drivers.
Gotcha.
Standings.
Got it mixed up. Okay.
So, but no, that's huge for the constructors as well, because Mercedes, the way that their pace has been, and obviously I think they have continued to develop their car longer than Ferrari or Red Bull have this season, continuing to introduce upgrades and all, which is completely understandable because they were behind. They had kind of not figured things out as well at the get-go, and so they needed more time to figure out the new regulations and all. But with that, they are now in a spot where 19 points is a little bit hefty for one race for them to make up and get P2 in the constructors. 7 points is nothing. Right. 7 points would be just beating the other guys, both just have your 2 guys ahead of their 2 guys, even if it's 1, 2, 3, 4 or anything like that. Would be with 7 point difference. That's constructors second place over to Mercedes easily. So it's going to take a lot for Abu Dhabi to for them to overtake Ferrari now, with Leclerc being able to pull out that drive after his crash. So
yeah, which is huge for the Ferrari angle of the season, because obviously, we like to say there's millions on the line for these teams, that difference of ending position, and we just use that to illustrate these teams aren't just coasting because somebody already locked something up. They are going to be fighting tooth and nail to the end, and especially with Charles is going to be probably the hungriest driver on the grid this Sunday. Him and Checo, I would argue.
I think Lewis is up there too. The 3 of them are probably all, because Lewis this would be his first season without a race win if he does not get one in Abu Dhabi. So
yeah, then honestly, I just consider him a washed up driver and just get him out of here.
Pretty trash. I definitely
probably not that great.
I definitely didn't buy this specifically because I saw it today and it had Lewis Hamilton's name. But honestly, Lewis, if you're listening, friend of the pod, This flavor sucks, dude. You are way better than this. You are way better than this.
What's that flavor called?
It's Lewis Hamilton Monster Energy. It says when you're a Formula One world champion, Lewis Hamilton, life moves at 15,000 RPMs and 200 miles per hour. A man who exists in a world of milliseconds demands a drink that can keep up. Well, fucking make a better flavor. I don't know what it was supposed to be, but it tasted like cough medicine. So I apologize, Lewis, but I did buy it specifically because your name was on it. I drank one and I saved a full unopened one to to have for the pod. So I bought 2 of them because of you.
Dude, no way he ever drinks that. Like, he drinks water and, like, maybe teas, I bet.
Yeah, well, definitely drinks tea. He's a Brit, so they're all tea drinkers over there.
But no way he's drinking just, like, sugared up energy water.
Yeah, I severely doubt it. But it was, I saw it, I had to buy it.
Sure. Lewis Hamilton flavored.
But yeah, so maybe
dude.
maybe my my trashing of his drink will put a little extra pep in his step for this weekend.
I'm sure that's really gonna make the difference, honestly.
Yeah, but getting back to Sao Paulo,
Sure.
I even with the incident with Charles, I felt real bad for Lando this weekend. He had food poisoning all week. There was a risk that he wasn't even going to race. Nick DeVries was like ready to suit up for McLaren, and at this point, I think he would have driven either a practice session or race for Williams, McLaren, Aston Martin, and Alpine all this season, which would have been just kind of insane for a reserve driver to get that opportunity.
Well, I think the insane part would be if he were to do all of those showings and then not get a seat. That would be the insane thing. Like, it's not crazy to me for there to be, like, this go-to guy on the grid. Like, that's sick to be that guy that all these teams are like, yeah, like, let's put him in the seat.
Right, like, he's here, he's with the teams, like, he's gonna, like, he's doing the simulator, like, yeah, chuck him in.
The insane thing would be for him not to have gotten a seat after, like, having so many opportunities to prove his stuff and, that's like, fair. Continue to get opportunities, right?
I'm just surprised that he's had this many opportunities in a season. Like, I don't think this is not common that we've had this many things.
That's
even during COVID, like Hulkenberg subbed in twice? Once for like Aston Martin and once for someone else. Like, but that was it. And that was during COVID when like people were getting sick much more easily and having to sit out for like having the quarantine period and everything. So
well, and that was why George got the drive at Mercedes, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. So it definitely is like a weird scenario for a driver to get that many opportunities, especially like with that many teams, just as being a kind of like reserve stand-in driver. But Lando, after his incident with Leclerc, ends up having his car and engine just sputter out and die on him. Food poisoning and all. It was also his birthday. Just not the best birthday for Lando, but just with how well he drove while not feeling 100%, I have to also just like give him a little shout out because that had to be brutal. He apparently lost like 3 pounds of weight in like a couple days just because he couldn't eat or drink or hold like much down. So for him to go out and put a drive like that, it was definitely sad to see it end in just a DNF due to the car failure. And even with the contact with Leclerc, like we had said earlier, it was just completely unintentional. He hit a curb a little too hard, and the car just kind of bounced out into Leclerc. So tough weekend for Lando.
Yeah, but I think an inspired drive on the other side from Charles to take a pretty
Oh,
significant hit that probably
absolutely.
would have he just as lucky he was able to pull it off the wall, but able to go all the way from the back of the grid, make it back up to P4. Pretty unfazed drive by Charles Leclerc, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, I would definitely agree with the shout out to Lando Norris making us all look like a bunch of weenies when we call off work, for a little bit of sniffles. He's like, "Nah, fam, I'll get a P6,
Oh yeah,
in a sprint."
he was ready to go. But now I guess we can get into the meat of it, to the drama. We see the next incident on the track.
I don't know if it's drama. I think the only thing you can say is that they are just like they don't give each other space, and
It's personal between the two of them, and I think that is the biggest difference between. But like
do
personally,
you really think it's personal?
I don't think that they like hate each other, but I think it's personal in the fact that neither of them will like bend when it's against the other person.
Mm-hmm.
But then we've seen a number of instances of Max racing hard against George this season, Max racing hard against Charles, Max racing hard against Sainz. This was Max's first incident this entire season.
Mm-hmm.
Second to last race in a 23-24 race season, and his first incident that he has of the entire season is with Lewis. I don't think that it's personal in the sense that a lot of people I think out there do, because this has been all anyone can talk about on F1 Twitter, podcasts, TikToks, anything
Right.
is
Which is so
this incident.
boring because like it's not even that interesting of an element of the race.
I think it's just the fact that, well, one, I think it is controversial. Like, I don't, in terms of the penalty, I thought it was a racing incident. Max was ahead going through the first turn, got a worse exit going into the second turn, but they were very close to being just like perfectly side by side. Like,
Right.
a lot of people were comparing it to when Ocon and Max had a collision last year and Ocon was penalized in a similar position as what Max was. But there were like two big differences between that incident and this one. The first one, the rule states that it says, in order for a car being overtaken to be required to give sufficient room to an overtaking car, the overtaking car needs to have a significant portion of the car alongside the car being overtaken, and the overtaking maneuver must be done in a safe and controlled manner while enabling the car to clearly remain within the limits of the track. So Max, and this is like the rule that was like from Abu Dhabi, and like the incidents where Max and Lewis were like kind of like cutting corners, running each other off the track.
Right.
So Max's front tire, the impact with Lewis was to the back of Lewis's front tire. The incident with Ocon and Max, one, Max had lapped Ocon. Ocon was trying to unlap himself driving hard against Max, which
Gotcha.
shouldn't have happened because, like, you're lapped, dude. Like, just you're getting blue flags to let him through, and then you're trying to race. So, like, that's one thing. Two, Ocon's front tire hit Max's back tire. So
Okay.
that's a big difference. It shows that Max was much closer side by side with Lewis.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because their front tires were where the impact happened,
Right.
and everything. But I just think it was a racing incident. I thought the penalty was, and like I've said it on the pod, I'm a Max fan, but like I trying to objectively look at it, I mean, even other drivers, other people who've been in F1, Marcus Ericsson tweeted out, replying to a tweet about Max getting the penalty, saying, "Don't agree with the call. For me, it's a racing incident. Both could have avoided it." And he said, "But for me, it's Lewis not giving Max enough room at the apex." And so, like, there's a lot of just like disagreement and everything with that, particularly also with Max's statements kind of afterwards, where he said essentially like, and I think people are taking it a little bit too literally, but he basically said, I was like trying to overtake him. I realized he wasn't going to give me space. I went for it anyway. It cost him a race win. It cost me 5 seconds kind of thing.
Right. See, that's the key. That's the key right there, is knowing that Lewis isn't going to give him space, but going for it anyway.
But
I think they just make really bad decisions around each other.
I do, and that's what I meant when it's personal. Like it's specific, personal as in like specific to the two of them. Like it's not that there's necessarily any ill will directed at the other person, but that like when it's the two of them head to head, like they don't budge. Like they're, but with that being said, I think that the way the statement is being taken from Max, and I could be completely wrong, I personally took what he said differently. I took it as, hey, like, I was going for this move. Like, he's already in the act of trying to go for the overtake.
Right.
When he realized, oh, Lewis isn't going to give me space. And it's either, one, back out and potentially still make contact because you're already side by side. And at that point, you went through the first, like, turn of this little, like, S.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it would have even been possible for him. Like, I'm in my thought process at that point, I don't know if there was any potential that even backing out when he realized Lewis like wasn't giving him space, the backing out would have even saved it from there being contact.
Right.
Like they're so close, side by side. Lewis is coming in from the outside. Max is trying to make the corner. Even if he pulls out, Lewis might still hit his front. Just he's hitting Lewis further back on the car. So I think just in terms of like everyone going crazy when it's Max and Lewis against each other, I think it got blown out of proportion. And like you said, I'm seeing all the drama online, but I agree with you for the most part that it was just like it wasn't that significant of a contact. Like, yeah, it was
exactly.
It sucked for Lewis because it definitely hurt his race. He had damage he had to deal with for the rest of the race, but he still had really good pace. For Max, it kind of ruined a decent portion of his race, but at this point, they've got the Constructors and the Drivers' Championship, so I think that's also where people were like, oh, like, he just feels like he has nothing to lose, so he just sent it into Lewis to fuck with him. And it's like, no, I don't think any driver's like intentionally crashing, which is why I think like the everything was taken a bit out of context with the words. But I do see it as generally a racing incident. I was a little surprised to see the 5-second penalty.
I think you are incentivized as the FIA to give penalties, especially in a scenario where like that's not the first time they've come together. Maybe in that exact same scenario, if there were two cars that don't have a history of aggressive driving towards one another, maybe it is just called a racing incident, but it seems like there may be too much of a history of moves like that for them to ignore it.
Should that come into play?
I think it should.
Really?
Yeah, I really think it should, to de-incentivize drivers from driving with that kind of mentality of like, oh, I'm just gonna go for the move anyway. Like if there's somebody, because you'll start to allow them to not care if they're coming together, if everything's just like rated as a racing incident and no penalties are applied. Like I think if you have two drivers that keep coming at each other, the rule makers have to come in and step in some way. And if that means applying penalties more harshly to these two specific drivers when they are coming together with each other specifically, maybe that's a strategy.
I can understand that, and I can somewhat agree. I think like similarly to how I spoke about the cost cap and everything. I think repeat offenders getting like additional or increasing penalties and whatnot makes sense. And so in like an instance like this, but this is their first time having this sort of thing this season. So I do feel to some extent taking last year history into account, 23 races in the season or whatever it was, might be a little bit far in terms of like where, like how far down the road does that harsher
the statute of limitations?
Yeah, like what, like if
sure, that's a good point.
In like 4 years, if or I guess 6 years when when Max's contract with Red Bull runs out, if he goes and takes a drive for Alfa Romeo or something like that, which I mean he'd probably just retire if like he wasn't in a top car.
Right.
But if Lewis is still around, it's like Max in an Alfa Romeo versus Lewis in like an Alpine or something like that, and they collide. Like, does that still just get like? Do you just say, "Oh no, not a racing incident"? They have history. Like, that's a bit
6 years in between each.
Well,
incident,
I mean that.
Sure. But if there continues to be a pattern of their cars being magnetic for each other,
yeah.
Yes, you continue to penalize them.
No, I know, but I mean that's just like where I'm saying, like, 6 year difference, or like
that's pretty far.
Like this is
one season doesn't feel that far fetched. I mean, it's
that's fair.
At this point, it's like less than a year ago.
Yeah, it's almost a year ago, but
okay.
But I do agree. Like, I think that if it is a consistent issue, but I think other cars in that same situation, it's probably deemed a racing incident. So I think the reason that I find it hard to agree with the penalty as well is like in a racing incident, like no one is deemed at fault. Like they deemed Max was at fault in this. And so that's where it's like what? Like if they're both going head to head and they keep having these things that for other people would be called a racing incident, how do you determine who is at fault? If you're like, this is just racing, it happens. Like, how does one guy just end up with more blame than the other? Do you alternate it back and forth? Like, how does that?
I think you just start dropping it on both people.
Like just
say like you have to make better decisions around each other, or we're gonna make
that would actually that would be reasonable. Like if you have multiple racing incidents with the same person where they can't really give a fault, just throw both a penalty.
Yeah,
like
that seems fine to me.
I'd be cool with that.
Yeah,
and like. But the other side of it too is like with a racing incident where cars collide, both of their races are like negatively affected by that situation anyway.
Right.
So like, are additional penalties necessary? I think like you were saying, I can agree with if it's a consistent issue, particularly between the same drivers, then like yes, increasing penalties like do kind of need to come into play.
And maybe only for the safety of other drivers, because it does put them in jeopardy if there's
debris on the like track and
right. Not necessarily worried about the end of the race, just worrying about like
like the integrity of the race itself for
Exactly.
like as a
And
whole,
the safety of
as
drivers.
opposed to just like the two people's race. So
Right.
yeah,
Because it's not the business of the FIA to care where Lewis or Max finish based on like applied penalties. They just have to de-incentivize aggressive driving and keep the other drivers on the track safe. And I think I think increasing those penalties and being willing to slap it on both drivers to de-incentivize that bad decision racing, it would be a strategy. Not maybe not even the strategy that I advocate most for. It just feels so impending when Max and Lewis are within, let's say, 3 seconds of each other.
yeah,
An overtake is imminent by one of them, and it's like, oh, they're just going to come together.
yeah.
They're just going to come together. That's the
Well,
sense you have as a fan.
I agree. It's just interesting because like I said, this is Max's first incident he's had with any driver this entire season.
Sure,
And
he's driven it very clean.
well, and I have a list of because there was of course a lot of Max Verstappen fans and Lewis Hamilton fans that go back and forth. It's always a Twitter thing. I just like I like I don't know what
Stappen.
I don't know what if there's a word for it, but like I love watching the bickering. Even though I
think it's Schadenfreude,
maybe, but isn't that when you like take joy in like the pain of others? Like I'm just taking like I just like the drama. I don't know, because like
secondhand drama.
Because I have like a side that I'm supporting, but I really do try to be reasonable. But like the Max fans were like they got the receipts. They're like, this is Max's first incident of the season. Like Lewis crashed with Fernando in Miami, Magnussen in Spain, Ocon in Monaco, Fernando again in Spa, Carlos in Zandvoort, Magnussen again in Monza, Carlos again in Singapore, pushed George off the track in Mexico and Miami, and then finally had contact with Max. And I just thought that like they were like, the list is piling up for Lewis and Max. It's just the one little blip, but I did find that interesting in terms of like the comparison. I just thought it was funny.
Yeah, and I'm happy that his Twitter lawyers have been keeping track of his squeaky clean record. That's awesome.
People don't forget. Well, actually, they don't forget the things that benefit their argument.
Exactly.
So,
but yeah, it does sound like Lewis has the blinders on when he gets close to other drivers.
As Fernando said, what is this guy doing? He only knows how to race from the front.
I was just about to say that he only knows how to be up front, and like it's just so funny when you think about it. It's like, yeah, he has no idea how to like be next to anybody or like race wheel to wheel anymore. He's been just so pampered by the front by Mercedes.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Dude, he's getting close though, man. P2 behind George Russell, who had a phenomenal weekend, phenomenal race, just kept it. And I think your points about the restarts, like honestly, that's so key.
Yeah.
And just like a beautiful illustration of the drive, because when you are hunting for that first win, like how easy would it be to jump the gun, get a little nervous, maybe, call for the wrong tire, just thinking like you knew more about the scenario than you did. But
well,
I think
and for that first win too, 100%, like you have to be just like, your brain has to be going crazy. And to have 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, 103 wins or whatever, 102, 103 wins, like on under his cap or notch in his belt, or what is it, notch in the cap under the belt, I don't know,
all works.
Either way, like having him chasing you down at the end, and just like George didn't make a mistake. It's like he drove pristinely, he drove so well. I like not risking anything, and like while drivers behind him, Lewis, Carlos, Leclerc, like all those guys are probably taking more aggressive lines through turns and things like that to try and make up that time. where he's just like, hey, I'm just going to control my distance, like make sure I stay clean, not slip up, and he didn't. And like that is a quality of a veteran driver, and he's still quite young. So I think that is definitely not the last of George Russell's wins in F1.
No, I don't think so at all. And just more to come. I think that's kind of my point to look forward to for next weekend is I honestly want to see another double podium from Mercedes. And it would just illustrate, or not illustrate, but I think just capstone the season so well, where you could just point like just a straight upward trajectory of performance improvement, learning about the car, and just like gaining and gaining and gaining and gaining and gaining until you climax at the penultimate race of the season. I'm just looking forward to hopefully Mercedes just kind of actually carrying forward that momentum. I think that'd be a really exciting like capstone to the season.
Yeah, I think it would be awesome for them to come so far. And like I said, like this very well could be to the detriment of next year's early season success, potentially, just because they did wait longer to start their like preparation and things like that for next year to continue to bring upgrades compared to Ferrari and Red Bull. But that being said, like they have come leaps and bounds, and so there's no doubt in my mind that they will be successful next year as well. But them kind of peaking here at the end of the season in terms of their performance is definitely fun to watch. It's exciting having three teams battling up there for wins, for podiums, and so that kind of leads us into the other couple of bits of drama that I wanted to pick your brain on because, of course, Red Bull and Ferrari both had a little bit of team drama. Max not giving the place back to Checo after passing him to help in that, like we said, the driver's standings between Checo and Leclerc. Max passed Checo. They told him if you can't catch, I think it was Fernando. Yeah, if you can't catch Alonso, give the place back. And Max did not do that. He even came across the radio, said, basically, I've told you why, and like my reasons are my reasons. Like, don't ask me again why I didn't give the place back, kind of thing. And so that brings up even more drama because from everyone's interpretation, behind the scenes, things that have been leaked out, it appears that Max has held a very long-standing grudge towards Checo because there are reports that Checo admitted to Helmut Marko and Christian Horner that he intentionally crashed in qualifying at Monaco to end the qualifying session and stay ahead of Max to start that race, which of course he did go on and win at Monaco, which the telemetry of the cars and whatnot apparently also lends itself to that being believed, that he intentionally binned it not very hard into
quick left into the wall.
Just it was as he was going out of the turn into tunnel, I think it is at Monaco, that right-hander jammed it on the throttle, which caused his rear end to slide out and hit the wall. And that's where Leclerc was like coming behind him and all, and had to like stop, and then all the cars like got backed up and everything. So
interesting.
An intentional like not hard crash,
right,
while he was in pole position and everything to end qualifying and stay up front, which then of course translated into the race win in Monaco. and
So this
everything.
gets back to Max, and he's just like, okay, dude, that's
So apparently, what most people believe, and Max didn't deny it, and he was asked about it after the race. He didn't discuss really, but he said we've discussed internally as a team. Or I forget what he initially said. Oh, he said I don't want to talk about the reasons. We've now sat together and explained everything, why I didn't do it. In the end, you have to move on. If Checo needs help in Abu Dhabi and I can like give that help, I'll do that. But they asked him in the interview, they're like, was this about Monaco? He's like, I'm not saying anything. You can decide for yourself, and just kind of left it at that. Didn't deny, didn't like confirm. But that is the common belief, I guess, at this point.
great.
So it sounds like, of course, they are cool. I wouldn't be surprised to see Max giving Checo a slipstream at Abu Dhabi during qualifying to like help his position in regards to like his battle with Leclerc. Like I assume at this point that like Max was like, I had an issue. This is my tit for tat, and now I'm moving on. And so like I do, as just a Red Bull fan and as a fan of him, I am disappointed a little bit. Like I think it's kind of childish. It's like and I don't know if this is just me personally because I have a struggle holding grudges because like I genuinely like forget, like my brain doesn't have whatever retention to like stay mad at people really for an extended period of time. I'll get upset about things and like they will like rile me up, the freaking road rage that I get sometimes and whatnot. But like when it comes to like being upset about at a person and like just like not letting that go, like I don't have it in me. It just, if I don't dislike the person genuinely, like I can't hold a grudge even if I'm pissed about something they did. So the fact that he's held that grudge for like half a season, just
looking for an opportunity,
just
to
like
cash in.
where they're just like, okay, Max, give the position back. Like I listened to the team radio, and they're like, okay, Max, give up the give the place back to Checo at turn 10. Max, give the place back to Checo. Max, give Checo the place back. Max, why didn't you give the place back? Like it was just, and he's like, I told you what my reasons are. Don't ask me again. That's like all he said. I was like, oh my god. So yeah, Red Bull, I guess handled. They talked internally from what both Checo and Max said, but that does bring Leclerc and Checo to a tie at 290 points in the driver's standings leading into the last race. On the other side, though, and this is where there's like a slight difference and it's funky, Leclerc requested team orders from Ferrari for Carlos to give him P3 to get the boost in points against Red Bull so that he would have the lead. And from all accounts, from what Carlos Sainz has said, he basically said, I would have given him the position. They never told me. So Ferrari like determined like, Leclerc's asking for us to swap positions around for his fight in the driver's standings, and they didn't even tell Carlos. And I don't know what's worse, because like the fact that Carlos like was willing to give up a podium for Leclerc and Ferrari was just like, nah, let's just let him drive, versus the other side with how Red Bull's scenario went through. Like very bizarre in my mind. Like that clearly is a big thing for these drivers and their like final standings and everything. So for like, I think that's another kind of flub on Ferrari's side. Like They're still getting the 3-4. There was no no real risk of. They acted like Alonso might get past Carlos if he gave up the position, but I mean, either way, like, is that really that huge? I don't know. I just thought it was.
I don't know what to think about that. That's kind of interesting. I knew that Charles had asked, but he just seemed like too far away for it to matter. But for them to not even like pass the message along.
Yeah, Carlos was like, I had no idea. He was like, if they had told me, I would have given up the place.
That's a tough one, man. That's that's kind of interesting. Maybe like were Lewis and Carlos like they weren't like racing each other really.
Carlos was 4 seconds back from Lewis.
Right.
And Charles was 4 seconds back from Carlos.
Yeah, so maybe it was just like maybe too little, too late. Because didn't that message come through like really late in the race?
It's tough. I can't tell because they sometimes play things not it live.
Yeah.
So like
but we heard it like way towards the end of the race. I think it was lap like 67 or 68 or so.
Yeah,
so it's
but
like,
I would say 4 laps is definitely enough to like give up that position. But and especially like the Ferrari had more pace than the Alpine.
Perspective, you know, maybe they're like, let's just not even like bother Carlos with it. He's got a race to finish.
Yeah, maybe. And like,
I wouldn't be mad at that.
No, it's just it's weird because like. I think from Carlos's side, like I was impressed by his like. I mean, Carlos is a good dude. Like all of them are generally good people, but the fact that even in the competitive, like I'm about to get a podium, he was just like, yeah, I'd give up a podium for him to have the upper hand in the drivers' standings. Like, I thought that was. One, cool on Carlos's side, but like also just weird from Ferrari that they didn't like say anything.
Yeah, and maybe moving forward they will, because maybe now they know that he'd be willing to in a scenario like that. That's tough to say though, but like weird handling of that.
Yeah, and very just like odd the differences between the two kind of requests for the teams, but. Now I guess we're leading into Abu Dhabi. Were there any final notes that we had for? Well, I mean, my only other note was Seb was driving a great race for like the most of it. I loved seeing that. It was fun. He was up in fifth at one point, like driving phenomenally. Finished just outside the points, but I didn't really have. One other. Sorry, I can't just move on. What the fuck happened with the unlapping of cars and Yuki getting left out of that? Like,
this is what I was trying to get to with the like cutting a hole in a fence. It just feels like there is so much going on and so many things have to like hit the board and then get cleared off in like a specific procedure that it does not surprise me when things like this happen where there's just like an oversight. He didn't get the timing right. Maybe the message came in late that all of a sudden he's like in this weird bad spot that he's not supposed to. Like, I'm not surprised shit like that happens, dude.
There were 3 lapped cars. 3. That's it.
Yeah.
Just 3.
Yeah.
Yuki pitted for fresh softs, comes out, and then they're just like, yep, the 2 Williams get to unlap themselves. Also, Latifi fucking took forever to unlap himself. Like, the cars are under safety car, and he's barely passing, like, anyone.
I'm saying though, we don't know that it's just up to the drivers. Like maybe the messages aren't coming down like whatever communication tree, and they're just not getting the confirmation from the pit wall to say like, hey, yeah, you're cleared to go. We're in this phase. Like that just shows me a lack of communication from like the teams and the pit wall to the driver. Like that's the sense that I get from a scenario like that. Not like let's like yell at the drivers.
No, not yelling at the drivers. I'm yelling at the FIA because like, well, I'm Latifi, I'm just like, everyone's going 70% speed and you still can't pass people quickly. Like, come on, dude.
Right.
That's more of just a eye roll Latifi kind of thing.
Yeah, I got
But
you.
the fact that Yuki got just like left a lap down on fresh softs where he could have like at least passed the two Williams guys probably, because the AlphaTauri has better pace than them and he was on fresh tires.
For sure.
And they just leave because the FIA, like, they did it out. I remembered seeing it. Like, it came across the screen. It said, lapped cars 6 and 23 can unlap themselves. That's Latifi and Albon. Those are their driver numbers.
Right.
22 just left to the fucking wind to just finish a lap down on a restart with only, like, 12 laps to go or something like that. Like,
that is pretty shitty.
it just it like sucks that even in something as simple as that, like, they still like I know everyone brings up Abu Dhabi last year with the situation in the lap cars and you only let a certain number of lap cars unlap themselves. You should have let everyone. The procedure with the FIA was like made so that they're like all lapped cars unlap themselves and they still fuck it up. Like, they intentionally changed how they do that process so that there wouldn't be another issue like last year. And then you just leave Yuki like in the middle of the pack blocking cars again, the exact thing that you're like trying to avoid controversy and like finishing positions, like, and you're like, oh, we just leave this AlphaTauri in the middle of the pack. Like,
sure. But what if, again, devil's advocate, what if it was like fine communication from the FIA? Maybe they were prepared to let Yuki go with the other Williams cars, but what if it was actually the AlphaTauri pit wall that pulled Yuki in like too late or too early, held him in the pits? Like, maybe he got out in a bad position because like they made a wrong decision. Like, I'm just saying, like, we don't know what happens in a scenario like that. Obviously,
right,
something
like,
gets
we're not
fucked
hearing
up.
the radio, but like,
Exactly.
if a guy who's been lapped pits, he's not gonna like not still be lapped. Like, and if the safety car, like, if you are allowing the other car, like, he didn't come out and the other car and Albon and Latifi had already caught up to the back of the pack or something. Like, they were still trying to find their way through the other cars coming around. Like,
Gotcha. So he still would have had time to do it.
100%. Like,
Okay.
it was just, he just legitimately got left out and like forgotten, like Magnussen on the side of the road. Like, it's, and I do agree there are a lot of like moving pieces and parts and everything, but when it comes to that with the racing, like the Magnussen thing being like left to find his way back to the pits is way less egregious to me than Yuki not being allowed to unlap himself. Because Kevin, it's like, yeah, there aren't like what are they called, access roads that were able to get him back, so, and we couldn't send the medical car back out because there's a safety car and a safety car restart. Like, or just like he'll get there. Like, I can understand that a bit more than being like, oh yeah, this AlphaTauri was lapped and now he's between P6 and P7 on the grid and we're just going to restart with him right there. Like,
yeah, and it does like mess with the integrity of the race. It does make it hard for the drivers that like got to that position on merit, and like
whoever's behind him is like potentially just like SOL on making up places and everything just because.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So it's just like that's frustrating to see like continue to be an issue. Like, we have
happy it didn't mess up your boy Max's race, then you would have even been more upset.
Max messed up his own race. I'm like, I am like, I can't, like I said, I can't hold a grudge, but like I was a little disappointed to hear that Max was like being kind of childish. The Max and Lewis collision, that's like its own thing. Like, I think that was just like he sent it and neither one of them budged, like we said. But with the Checo thing, I was like, really? Like, you held on to that from Monaco? Monaco feels like it was fucking just like
forever ago.
Yeah, like that. Was Monaco this year? I don't know. Like, it's fucking forever ago. So the fact that he held on to that long, I was like, eh. But yeah, it's a bummer because, like, especially in some of these drivers and constructors standing fights, like Yuki blocking someone because he didn't get to unlap himself could be significant in an Alfa Romeo Aston Martin fight, in a Haas Alpha Tauri fight. Like, it like makes a difference. So I was a bit bummed to see that be an issue again. But I think that's my last point about the race. If we want to move on, unless you have any other final notes.
Nope. No, just looking ahead to Abu Dhabi. The only thing like I said, was I'm just looking forward to seeing Mercedes continue, hopefully finish off really strong using the momentum that they've built up.
Yeah.
That's kind of my like story note looking forward. But no, I
love
didn't really
to
have
see it.
anything else. Yeah, I think it'd be great. Nothing else about Brazil though.
And I'm looking forward to Abu Dhabi. Of course, it's going to be Seb's last race. So Alonso, Vettel, and Seb are going to be the first press conference group this weekend, which is kind of cool. The three of them have all been there together for a number of press conferences. And so that is pretty neat that they get to do it together. It's going to be the Donka Seb farewell tour. So I'm hoping he puts in a good race this weekend.
Yeah, at least, finishes close to, what would you like where you expect him to.
P9, P10. If he could get the points, that'd be sick. That would be awesome.
Right. I think, that's the best thing to be said.
Yeah, so that's cool. Just a couple other notes for Abu Dhabi. McLaren will have a special livery that looks pretty sweet. It is very artsy. I like can't think of what artist does this style, but it's like the different colored like lines that are together that look kind of like flowers and whatnot. I'll send this to you real quick because I don't know, maybe you will have a better impression of what this actually is if you want to check out that tweet. But the other note I had was from Twitter, but Mercedes, if they score points at Abu Dhabi, which it is obviously likely they will, they'll be the only team that scored points in every race this season.
Wow.
So, and
that's consistency. Holy hell.
They so far have only had 2 DNFs this season, and they were due to crashes as opposed to like reliability issues comparatively to the Red Bull at the beginning of the season and the Ferrari kind of carrying through. So
right. Yeah, looking at this livery for the McLaren, I'm not sure. I don't know like what style that is. They just look like,
yeah, there's
very simple way to describe it though.
Yeah, I know there's like a different, it's like a specific art style, but it looks cool. I'm looking forward to seeing it. They have some pretty cool liveries, and I love what they can do with that light blue and the orange and everything. So looks neat. Just the other, before we move along from F1 though, just the other brief tidbits I'll sprinkle in. Of course, moving at a snail's pace, Haas still has not announced their driver for next year, but Hülkenberg seems to be the most likely person Daniel Ricciardo, the story has flipped where he is now looking more likely to join Red Bull as the reserve driver as opposed to Mercedes. Still,
Gotcha.
of course, not announced, so we're just like inching our way forward with these stories. And if Mick does not end up with drive at Haas next year, he looks like he may end up becoming the reserve driver at Mercedes instead. So that's a little bit of a shift. Toto was in an interview and basically said we love Mick, the Schumachers are part of like when you think of Schumacher, like Mercedes is like what we want you to think, kind of thing. We'll take care of Mick. It was the gist of what he said, which was pretty cool to see because I think he's driven well, and if he doesn't get the drive for Haas this coming year and Hulkenberg gets it instead, I'm glad to see he's still in F1, and I think Mercedes is probably a good place for him to be because he can continue to develop there as a reserve driver and potentially get a drive elsewhere down the road, which I wouldn't hate to see because I think he has earned another season in my mind. I think it's odd that Haas was like, we're doing a full reset. Old men, Magnussen and Grosjean out. Young guys, Schumacher and Mazepin in. And now they're going back to like old guys after a couple seasons with Hulk
maybe
and
they're
Magnussen.
finding they just want like experience in the car. Maybe they're finding that that's better than like hot shot, built-in talent. I don't know.
It's possible. It's just it's a bummer, or it would be a bummer to see someone who I consider to be a like decent driver just fall out of F1 because the team just like thinks something else is a better fit, even though I don't see it. But I mean, I'm not in these teams. I'm not a part of it. I'm sure these things happen all the time. I'm sure in the course of F1, this is just my first experience of like drivers being kind of just left out because maybe there's just like no right fit for them. So,
or at least not right now, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, so that would be interesting if he ends up going to Mercedes as a reserve. The only other thing with F1 that I have is that it is now there are increasing reports that Ferrari will get rid of Mattia Binotto as the team principal, and they are looking at Frederick Vassar, who is the team principal over at Alfa Romeo, I think, to take over the position. So that is the kind of most likely thing, but Ferrari did come out and say, in relation to speculation in certain media regarding Scuderia Ferrari team principal Mattia Binotto's position, Ferrari states that these rumors are totally without foundation. And then next week after Abu Dhabi, we'll hear Ferrari says farewell to Mattia Binotto. Like it was seemed very much a just like, hey, don't listen to the rumors, but like they're true kind of statement. They're like, in relation to the speculation of certain media, this isn't a thing. It's like, it seems like if people are saying it, there's probably been some conversations.
Right.
So
well, that'll be interesting. Maybe get some fresh strategic mind up there at the top. Maybe Fred Vassar will have better ideas of what to do during these stressful races because it does seem like a lot of the struggles have come down to communication and like tire strategy.
And Alfa Romeo has had pretty good strategy this season. It's just they haven't had the car for competitiveness since like the first few races. They just didn't progress at the same pace of their competition there in the grid, because we had Valtteri up there at the beginning of the season. We're like, oh, Valtteri is like beating Lewis, beating George, who like took his seat kind of thing. And now it's just like, Alfa Romeo's just like there. They're just like finishing like 11th, 12th, like
Right.
9th this week. So, but that's all I've got for F1. I know it was a lot. I took everyone through it.
Well, yeah, it was
Hashed out the drama.
Yeah, there was a lot going on, and clearly a lot more behind the scenes than I even realized. So yeah, I'm happy to have gone through it. Now we've kind of finished up here with some F1 roster moves. Now, obviously, we had the World Championships League wrapping up recently. Check out, I guess, last week's episode for us covering the World Finals. But did you want to talk about any like roster moves, anything interesting happening that you wanted to hit?
I didn't really have much yet. I think just with it being the off season, I kind of turned League of Legends off in my brain a little bit.
Oh yeah, me too.
I didn't see that much on the timeline, so I've just kind of the FTX crypto thing with everyone. Just kind of. That was the only thing. Apparently, the FTX founder was like hard stuck bronze 3 after like 1,000 ranked games or something like that. That was the only League of Legends news that I really saw this past week. But that kind of cracked me up. I'm like, man, like you came up with this like company. You're leading this charge with a like new. Like, clearly not a dumb person, even with what happened with FTX and everything. But to be in bronze 3 for 1,000 ranked games is pretty rough. Like, you're not learning as you play. Because, like, you and I, we have grinded League a lot at different points in time, and you had Excel spreadsheets where you were keeping track of your CS at 10, like your all these different stats, and like calculable ways to determine like if you were improving,
like,
if you were keeping, or even if like, oh, like I was getting 8.3 CS per minute in like silver 2, now I'm in gold like 2, and I'm still maintaining that same level. Like I'm not declining in these areas as I'm getting against tougher competition, things like that. Like I kept a very like thorough like little sticky note thing on my desktop of like the champions that I had the most success with, that I like was the most comfortable playing. I had for each role, I had like 5 champions that I was like, these are my top ones. And if I was playing like too much League of Legends, I would get bored and just like sprinkle in other shit, like me with my ridiculous amount of champions played per season kind of thing. But like 1,000 games in bronze and like you still are like stuck there. I'm like, you got to be doing something better. Like you got to figure out how to progressively like improve, because there's no reason that you couldn't have learned at that level. It's not mechanics, it's decision making that is like
or
winning
attitude.
or losing games, or attitude. So like this man hard stuck. But that's the only League of Legends stuff that I had to talk about.
Fair enough, man. Yeah, he couldn't handle it, and just decided to get out. Couldn't handle the kitchen. Bronze was just too strong for the guy. But yeah, no, that's cool. We can save some roster talks. There's just some spicy contracts that are expiring, and we're going to see some interesting people on the free agent list, maybe some pretty interesting shakeups, but we can let that develop a little bit more.
Let me take a look real quick just so I can get an idea, but the League of Legends free agency, I need just like the date that it happens in terms of like people being released from their contracts. Do you have that or has it
Yeah,
happened?
I think a lot of it is 11/21.
Okay, I had a feeling that it was like coming up because I've seen like a lot of I've seen a few of the I'm contracted under X organization, but they've allowed me to start freely talking to other teams kind of thing.
Hmm.
But I was not 100% sure what was going to be going on with that. There's a whole, like, I just by trying to figure that out, I found a page of who all's free agency is coming up. Fakers is coming up. I think I think we all
JG
know.
Faker
I think we all know where he's going to be going.
or
Cloud9.
he went the non-joke route.
What? No, he's
You
gonna
heard me, dude.
He's gonna,
You heard me.
He's gonna
The
stay in.
non-joke route.
He's gonna stay in T1. He's not like. I just cannot imagine him being anywhere else. I think it would be a sin to see him in a different jersey.
Yeah, maybe.
If he goes to a different team, any games of his I watch, I'm blocking out player cams because I refuse to see Faker in a different jersey.
There you go. At least, well, maybe if he's on another team, we won't have to watch Faker and his teammates cry. Maybe he gets the story at the end.
Oof.
That's far down the line. But yeah,
Yeah.
it'll just be interesting to talk about some of the free agency once we get closer and like once rosters are kind of shored up.
Definitely.
I'm not I don't tend to be in the rumor mill, so I can't even offer up like really anything that interesting, but
That's
just
all right.
just some interesting contracts. But yeah, we can get into that later. But
Well,
before we move on to some more esports, I want to talk about the finale of the IEM RIO. We're just going to take a quick little break and we will be right back. And we're back to talk about the IEM RIO tournament. Now, what did you catch? What did you see? What's your exposure level here?
So very minimal, unfortunately.
Okay.
Just with this past weekend being away, I was keeping up with the F1 was about all I had, but I did see some interesting things that I was curious to hear your opinions about, but it seemed as though the crowd was a bit of a bummer if Furia was not playing. It seemed like it was like electric when Furia was playing as a Brazilian organization. Their game against their series against Navi looked like I saw some brief clips and crowd shots and whatnot, and it looked like insane energy and whatnot. And then I saw like empty stadiums for the semifinals between Outsiders and Mouse, and I'm like, like what is the deal? And so I didn't really get to follow too much in terms of actual play, but that was the one of the things I saw that I was like kind of curious about, like your perspective on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you nailed it right on the head. I think for the teams that were coming from Brazil, I think the fans, like, if anything, were a tailwind for them and actually kind of helped them perform. But yeah, if they weren't playing, and Furia was the Brazilian team that made it out of the groups and into the playoff run, you're right. They were super electric for them, but didn't really give a lot of love to the other teams, which is kind of a shame, especially where they sell it as like being just massive fans of just good CSGO in general. It was curious to see that, like, they didn't really pick other orgs to like get behind or celebrate. And like you were saying, for the Mao's Outsider series, it was kind of an empty stadium, which, to be fair, it was like at 2:00 on a Sunday. I don't know what it's usually like, but based on some of the group stage matches, even having like a full house, it's surprising that for the semis, like it wasn't that sold out. So yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely think the crowd had an interesting factor for this tournament specifically.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too because like CS:GO like is commonly thought of as a like Brazilian and European kind of dominated game. Like
Mm-hmm.
North America is just like not typically a factor. I think even like Cloud9's team in CS:GO, I believe, used to be Gambit, so I believe it's a Russian team. I don't think it's even a it's not a North American team like League of Legends. So it's primarily European, and like Brazil has a huge CS:GO like player base and whatnot. So that's why it kind of like surprised me and disappointed me a little bit in terms of the like hearing that, because I feel like at least in League, wherever Worlds is, whether it's in China, Korea, NA, EU, we have had phenomenal like groups of fans that are traveling. I believe, well, fans that are traveling or are happy to root for teams that are not maybe their major region team. I Not to get political, but I wonder if Brazil's situation with they recently had a change in their president that has not been looked. I mean, it caused controversy in terms of there's a brief blip on the radar where the Brazilian Grand Prix for F1 was like in question if it was going to be, because there was the transition of power did not go as smoothly as you would hope in terms of elections and whatnot. So maybe that made it more difficult, or people were more hesitant to travel for this kind of major in Brazil. And so like you're just ending up with primarily Brazil hometown fans and don't get as much travel. So that could have played into it. But I thought that was an interesting point, because I do feel like, I mean, even like when I went to see like the league semifinals like years ago up in Madison Square Garden in New York, like I watched T1 play Samsung, I think, which I'm not Korean. I'm not like watching Korean League of Legends all the time, but I was like, oh, I have people that I'm aware of in the scene, like Faker, like all these guys, Peanut and everything. I'm like, I'm going to be able to sit here and enjoy good League of Legends and like cheer. So I was like surprised that there wasn't the same, especially knowing Brazil has a huge like fan base, to not see like people just like go to see good CS:GO.
And it seems like they did throughout most of the tournament, but I think once once the Brazilian teams were out, the overall interest just like kind of plummeted, honestly.
It's a bummer. Like, do you think that plays a? I mean, I would imagine that has to play a part in like tournament organizers like planning of where to host these championships and everything. Like, like
Sure.
IEM Brazil like was a bummer in terms of the turnout. Like, let's do it at IEM Katowice or IEM like San Jose or something like that instead.
Right.
Like, which sucks, because like I said, Brazil is like top 2 probably in terms of fan base for this game. So for that to happen and potentially affect their future of being able to have majors in their country kind of sucks.
Yeah, especially I'm pretty sure this was the first major in Brazil. So yeah, definitely from that perspective, not like a great first time out.
Yeah, but in terms of the gameplay, I want to hear about it. Like, what all did you see? Who were some standout performances and whatnot? from the CS:GO just like realm to kind of keep an eye out?
Sure. So I think the first interesting note to say right before the quarterfinals, like right before the playoff stage, the what would have been favorites for the tournament. You had FaZe Clan, who has at the time Kerrigan and Rops, who are just like stud players and like server dominant players. So you have FaZe Clan going out before playoffs, and then you also have Vitality, who has a player named Zywoo, who is
Yeah.
just an insane fragger. And when Vitality is winning, Zywoo has a lot to do with that. So you see Vitality and FaZe Clan going out in like basically the group stages, which sets up the playoff stage incredibly interesting, because instead of having these like, okay, well, they're definitely going to move through no matter who they're playing against, they're kind of like the favorites. You just have a bunch of teams that on paper wouldn't have won the turn, like wouldn't be expected to win the tournament coming in. You have at the top of that list, you have FaZe Clan, Vitality, and Navi as like the top three teams in the world currently going into this major. So with two out of those three teams being knocked out in the playoffs, you just have Navi left going into the quarterfinals. You actually have a more even playing field at the start of the playoffs. So going top down, first we had Cloud9 versus Mouse, which is a 1-2 series, goes to all three games. That was a super exciting round. Me, I was rooting for Cloud9 just because of the kind of North American heritage.
Association, yeah.
Yeah. They end up losing to Mouse 1-2. Mouse then goes up against Outsiders. Fnatic versus Outsiders. Outsiders 2-0s them. Heroic 2-0s Team Spirit. And then the interesting thing, and this is where the crowd comes in, is Furia 2-1 over Navi, who easily would have been the favorites in that matchup going in. But I think based on the map pool and just the volume of the fans getting behind Furia and the pop-off potential of some of the Furia players, like namely Quesarado and guy's name is Drop, they just like went crazy. So Navi is able to pick up the first game on Nuke, which is kind of their like creme de la creme of their map pool. One of the stronger teams on Nuke. So they win that map pick, and then Furia beats them back to back on both Ancient and Mirage. I believe was map 3 was the decider. So 16-10, both of those games, and Furia, just with the help of the crowd, takes down what would have been the only tournament favorite left in the tournament, and then would have even had a favorable matchup going into semifinals and then the grand finals, no matter who they would have been up against. So Furia kind of pulls an upset there in the last quarterfinal of the playoff stage, which sets us up for like a really interesting semifinals. So ultimately the team that kind of comes out of nowhere is this outsider squad with dude named James as their in-game leader. So I didn't know a whole lot about outsiders until the playoff rounds, where like they're a little more in the spotlight, and you kind of get to look a little more high resolution at them. One of the key things that they did was implement overpass into their map pool, where traditionally that spot would have been reserved for an Inferno or something similar. They pivoted and included a map called Overpass, which is significantly CT sided, and their late round calls where they'll hold, not give up information, hold, run the clock down, get players in position, maybe bleed some info, reposition, running down that clock until you're at 45 seconds, 35 seconds, 30 seconds left, and then executing on a site. Now, as I understand it, this style is really hard for teams to play against. You get jittery. You want to just like all commit to a site. You don't necessarily know what to do. So this strategy, combined with just always saving, if like they didn't see a way out of the round. So they're constantly keeping rifles and ops in scenarios where other teams would have just lost them and you would have been playing this straight up economy game. Interestingly enough, Outsiders was never out of it because they were always able to keep like a rifle and an op or two rifles up, or kill the opper on the other team, drop the rifle, pick up the rifle, so your lone player at least is able to bring that power weapon into the next round. So where other teams would have been like losing to economy, James, the in-game leader, is making these calls to say like, no, just back off, 3v5. We're not going to win this. Just save it for the next round. So I think this gave them a lot of game in these playoff rounds, and was just a strategy that these teams weren't prepared for. So that was one element of the Outsiders playstyle, who end up, eventually winning the tournament. Another element of it is Mao's, Outsiders, Heroic, and Furia. Not any of these teams have ever hoisted a trophy before. So we're in this very interesting position of like stage jitters and like clutch factor and choke factor. All of this stuff begins to enter the conversation because you have a lot of really young players. Right. So you actually come out with these like hyper exciting semifinals where you really didn't know which way it was going to go because we have so many young players and so many like new to the late stage tournament sector. Whatever you want to call it. So it was just like a lot of fresh hands there. So that made it kind of exciting too.
Nice.
Yeah. So
it seems like,
ahead.
And looking at the brackets and everything, like talking about the kind of path. So there's the road to Rio, which was like the group stage essentially, like you were talking about. And with Outsiders, they just looking at this, they matched up against Mouse in round 1 of a 5-round like double elimination bracket and lost their first. Yep. So they were on the brink of elimination for the rest of their tournament to just make it to the like bracket stages. They had lost to Mouse pretty hard. They lost 16-6 before going on, winning 16-12, 16-12, and then 2-0ing Fnatic to get to the main stage essentially, which is just kind of nutty that they went down in that first round against Mouse and then were able to just like battle through. And I think that, like you were saying, kind of speaks to the in-game leader a lot in terms of composure and just the ability to make good decisions. Like that's a fucking hard position to have in CSGO. In-game leader is not easy. Like that blows my mind.
Like come from behind is like it would just be even tougher. So for them to like adapt within the tournament, take the loss, learn from it, 2-1 that team then in the semifinals, I think just speaks kind of volumes to adaptation and their ability to make calls. So yeah, they had a lot to do after that first loss, with the back against the wall. So just a really interesting story from the Outsiders' perspective. And then just talking about the final, goes up against James, the in-game leader for Outsiders, goes up against Cadian, the IGL for Heroic, who, Cadian has been searching for this. He's a long-standing player. I think he's been playing for around 10 years or so. Has been hunting for a major win for a while now. But yeah, Outsiders just like 2-0, and it was not even necessarily close. I'm pretty sure second game was 16-5, I believe. So yeah, not that close in the finals, but yeah, it was just some fun CSGO. I think it was a fun tournament to learn from. As I understand it, we're kind of in this like rebuilding youngster kind of phase. A lot of the old guard has retired or is like in legacy positions and stuff like this. So it was fun to kind of get a look at a fresh crop of CSGO players to the degree that, maybe it would increase my chances of tuning in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting. And there are still some like big names that are in these tournaments, like you said,
Oh
like
yeah, big time.
Zaiwu and some of these other guys who I think are pretty popular or like well known names in the CS:GO space. But that is cool, especially that you said 3 of the final 4 Fury. So Fury is
All
one before.
4.
Oh, all 4. So
Yep.
like all 4 teams in the semifinals had not won a major before, which is that's sick. That's awesome.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like I know C9 has way back. They won the Boston Major. It's NA's only, I think, major win in CS:GO. Navi, of course, has won before. So like beating teams with like storied histories to go. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, I think, and to a certain degree, to go back to the original point, I think it was, fans behind them, and there was kind of something magical in that crowd happening behind
Mo-
the Brazilian teams.
Momentum has a huge effect on
It
things.
does.
It's intangible, but like definitely plays a part. So that's pretty cool. But were there, I guess, any final notes you had for the IEM Rio?
No, not really. Like I said, just kind of looking forward to the next one. I'm pretty sure Katowice is like end of January. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Definitely going to tune in because this one really got my appetite wet for some CS:GO. I didn't know I didn't know I could be so interested in the first person shooter. I think, and I was talking to Sarah about this a little bit, and then we can move on. I was always kind of intimidated by CS:GO. That was kind of like the game you played if you were like hardcore, if you were really
Yeah,
good, if you had great hands. And then like, there's this esports side of it that I was aware of, but again, I always thought like, oh, that's just like, they're way too good for me. I don't even
yeah,
understand. So I did feel a little like gated off from it, but yeah, this was definitely fun and exciting. Definitely looking
yeah.
forward to Katowice.
Well, once you understand the concept of the game and how it works and everything, it like becomes so like just getting past that barrier to entry, which I think for CS:GO is not as big as it is for other esports. I mean,
I think
like
you're right.
League of Legends, Valorant, even with the different agents that you have and learning abilities, like CS:GO is just like you have the strategy, you know the map, do you shoot better than the other guy? Like that's
Hmm.
it. That's what it comes down to. And like I think once you get past the barrier of like knowing how the matches play out, like the economy aspect of it, things like
Hmm.
that, it becomes such a casually watchable esport comparatively to a lot of other ones, which I think is really like dope. Which I think I had a similar initial like thought with CS:GO, but back in the day, I started watching a little bit just like because I was on Twitch all the time, and like
Hmm.
sometimes there wasn't League of Legends going on. I was like, CS:GO, that's cool. Like I'll throw it on. Um, and so once you get past that, it's like much easier than I initially anticipated to like just enjoy watching when you catch it, even as a casual like watcher.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and it's so obvious sometimes it's hard to know if something exciting just happened in League or like this esport or whatever. Like maybe it's not so obvious, but like when you see somebody mow down all 5 players that were like trying to run into a room, that is I I don't care who you are. That's good video games.
oh
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
that's like
Yeah.
that's a top exciting like moment kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like
Yeah.
you can't beat it.
So yeah, definitely happy to explore some CS:GO and happy to do it in the future. Now, I just have a little bit of magic I want to sprinkle on. It's for like really not like anything crazy.
Cool.
We just had some games on Monday with the Michigan gang, which I've taken to call them. That is Milk, Braxit, and Buddha Spoon. Shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for playing with me. I'm just gonna call them the Michigan gang. The they are the aforementioned players. It's always just a really fun time. It's a much more laid back environment. Usually we're just kind of playing to play and enjoy each other's company. There's less of an intention to win, kind of like there is on some nights with the Commander 9 gang. Obviously that has shifted way more to just like playing fun brews and just playing together. But it is even more relaxed than that with the Michigan gang. So it's always just a laid back vibe. I got to play my Intet deck, which is the home of some of my new Secret Lair cards. I was hoping to see some of the really cool new arts. So that was just fun. Always nice to get games in with them. I had 2 games with Death on Sunday that were super fun. Met a new friend in those games. Came
Nice.
really close to winning both games, but it is just really hard to push through a bunch of players playing blue and cards that say no. It is sometimes very hard to get through that. I almost had a Blood Moon win me the game, but yeah, just fun stuff. Really fun to play at that high power level. And I think we have some games planned for this coming Sunday too. So always looking forward to that. But yeah, just a little bit of good magic happening this week, and a little bit more upcoming as we kind of get to the close of the year here.
Nice. I love it. And very cool that you've got some games planned up for this coming week as well. It's sounds like it's always you have fun no matter what like pod you're
Pretty
playing
much.
in. You just like playing. So that's dope. But leading in, I guess, into the flavor of the week for this week.
Let me hear yours, sir.
Get it going. So my flavor of the week this week for food, tacos, Mexican food. We just like everywhere we went over in San Diego, we were just like, I mean, San Diego's, I don't know, something like 15, 20 miles from the Mexican border. So we were just eating guac and chips and tacos and salsa and everything the whole time. Quesadillas, just phenomenal Mexican food. So I have to, of course, give a shout out to that. Colleen, for my music, she put together a great playlist since we did have the drive from LA to San Diego in the rental car. Great playlist. Lots of songs referencing California, which was pretty funny. There's a lot of good songs with California either in the title or the lyrics.
Hell yeah.
So
Hotel California.
Hotel California was on there. We were jamming out, and then for my visual, I don't. It might have been on there. I'll double check.
It's a big miss if it's not.
It would be a miss, but the rest of the songs definitely they fit the vibe well. Okay. But for my visual medium this week, for the airplane flights and everything, Colleen had downloaded some movies and whatnot, but my big thing, I brought my Game Boy Color with Pokemon Blue and was just crushing through that.
Nice.
But I'm like playing it differently than I typically have played Pokemon games in the past. My Pokemon gaming experience is, I'm like, I just want to beat the Elite Four, kind of. I very one-track mind. I'm like, I just want to get strong enough to like beat the Elite Four and be like the Pokemon champion. And which, by the way, side note, Ash Ketchum, after 25 years as a 10-year-old child, finally in the last episode of the Pokemon anime, of whatever the recent one is, finally became the Pokemon World Champion. So nice 25 years as a 10-year-old, but it's in whatever the most recent Pokemon anime is, which I think might be the end to like the Pokemon.
The Ash Ketchum saga, at least?
Yeah, I believe so.
Wow, that'd be crazy.
Yeah, so, well, he did it.
So many regions.
He won it. But, yeah, I've been playing through differently. I'm, like, trying to keep my entire party at, like, approximately the same level and everything. I'm, like, really grinding through. Like, I am not missing a single trainer that I can battle and try and level up my Pokemon as I go through. And I'm trying
What
to
starter did you pick?
Charmander.
Hell yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I always pick the fire type because most of the games don't have super strong fire types that you can get outside of the starter.
That's meta
From
right
my experience. So yeah, I was just like crushing through that. Like, I've made my way a decent ways. I've got like 10 hours of playtime in the past like few days. So I playing a shit ton of Pokemon. The batteries on my Game Boy died. I had to get throw new batteries and
sick.
I had to throw new double A's in there. But yeah, that's
100% sick.
my visual media. It took a minute to like get used to the uber pixelated like no color screen and everything, but once I got past that I was like, okay.
Was Mount Doom, or not Mount Doom, when you first get to Mount Moon, like you have to navigate that in the dark, correct?
No, that's oh shoot, I'm not there yet. That's the so Mount Moon goes from Vermilion to Cerulean City.
I think it's Viridian, yeah.
Viridian City to Cerulean City, from Brock's gym to Misty's gym. The cave you're thinking of, which I'm blanking on the name, is right by Lavender Town with all the ghosties. So that's the one that you need Flash to like actually like navigate.
Okay.
So Mount Moon, like the whole thing of that is it's just like giant. You have to fucking fight a bajillion Zubats, and
So
then
many
you
Geo,
fight,
dude.
and then you fight Team Rocket
Yep.
going through there.
But you're saying in blue, it's not dark in the cave.
No, it's not.
Okay,
So
see, I
it's
thought that was something that they changed
well,
in Leaf Green.
oh, maybe. No, so in Mount Moon, it's not dark, but when you get up to whatever the other one is, which I can't think of the name, that one is always like a dark cave. So,
But that's after you have HMO 5, I think it is, for Flash.
I believe so. I'm not quite there yet. I got cut, so I'm like,
Gotcha. Cutting down the trees.
yeah. So I'm
yeah.
I'm in. I just beat Lieutenant Surge.
Oh, fuck yeah. Okay, with his Raichus.
Exactly. So
Oh, yeah. Dude, let me just tell you how much of a filthy casual I am and how much better you are at Pokemon than I am. So I started with Squirtle, but when I had the opportunity to get a Magikarp, I'm like, well, I'm going to train him too.
Wait, no, I got a Magikarp, and I did the trade early on where you can trade for the Magikarp, and but the thing is,
But you don't already have a good water type, is what I'm saying. Is I have Squirtle plus a Gyarados.
Yeah.
Like I didn't meta my party well enough.
I've always liked Charmander better, but it just so happens, especially in Gen 1, that's like the best like fire Pokemon you can really get. It's not very easy to get like a good other, I guess like Flareon or maybe Rapidash might be your next best fire Pokemons outside of Moltres, but
those are like later game. You don't really encounter them. You don't have enough time to train them. So yeah, no, that's actually like really high level Pokemon right there. Nice thinking. But yeah, sorry to cut you off.
Oh no, but yeah, I like the way I've been doing it, which has worked really well, is I go to areas that my high level Pokemon are competitive. So like I'm battling like my Pokemon are around level 20 and I'm battling like level 17, 18 in just the wild. And so I just threw that Magikarp up front and just immediately audible him out and just rack up all the experience points crazy fast. Just leveling up like 2 Pokemon at a time. So it's been fun. It was cool playing through. I don't know how much I'll play for the next little bit, but it was a fun way to pass the time on the airplane. So
that's what's up.
Yeah, but that is my flavor of the week.
Very cool. I'll start where you finish, my visual medium, and I'm not gonna say anything else. I'm just gonna say it was great and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and like I kept thinking about the end hours after the movie was over. I'm not gonna say anything else other than that. Like when walking by it in the living room, I couldn't not watch it. It
Okay.
was just like immediately engrossing. Where the Crawdads Sing,
Okay, I haven't seen it.
I'm pretty sure it's on. I think we watched it on Netflix. It was. So
Okay.
if you're inclined, check it out. It
I've
was
heard it.
super good.
I've heard good things. Just the fact that I've heard of it means that it's been positive, because otherwise I would just have like let it go from my brain. But
Gotcha.
so I'll have
But yeah,
to
I was
check it
like, I
out.
was super like stuck, and the finale just like really like fucked with me. So yeah, overall, I thought that was great. And then
Nice.
my food here for the week, Sarah hooked up another batch of that Chipotle ranch sauce. So we've been doing chicken steak sandwiches,
Ooh.
little homemade on some nice hoagie rolls. So that's been just like super choice. I love being able to make like things at home that you would traditionally like just get out of like a pizza joint
Oh,
or whatever.
100%. Yeah.
So yeah, that's been sweet. And then my music here for the week, the Kingdom Hearts soundtrack is just beautiful. I love what they do with it. There's actually a warning at the start of the game that says like if you're planning to stream this just for the music, you got to go through all these steps. I take it that it has been such a draw that they had to like include something and be like, don't do this, please.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
so yeah, it is just super magical, and I think just connects you to the world so much. And so that was just a really fun element of the playthrough is going back and like hearing the soundscape that was like part of the thing that you fell in love with. So just like epically nostalgic for my music here, the Kingdom Hearts 1 soundtrack. But that is my flavor of the week, sir.
Beautiful. I love to hear it. But for the ladies and gentlemen out there, that does bring us to the end of this week's episode. Of course, as always, thank you all for listening. We really appreciate everyone taking the time to check out every bit of what they enjoy of the podcast. So thank you so much for taking the time, and we're looking forward to next week recapping Abu Dhabi and the end of the F1 season.
Yeah, just tell your friends that we release new episodes every Thursday. Reach out on Twitter at tall and short of one, like the number one. But yeah, just wanna echo Aaron's sentiment. Just say thank you so much for spending your time with us. Thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everybody.
Adios.